Welcome, dear viewers, to a tale of unexpected encounters, hidden paths, and the transformative power of compassion in a small town that holds more secrets than meets the eye. Enjoy the story. The sleek midnight blue Audi R8 purred as it wound its way through the narrow streets of Millbrook, a quaint town nestled in the heart of rural America. Behind the wheel sat Alex Thornton, his designer sunglasses hiding eyes that scanned the unfamiliar surroundings with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. At 32, Alex was the epitome of big city success: tailored suit, expertly coiffed hair, and an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. He was a fish out of water in this small town, and he knew it. As he rounded a corner, a flash of movement caught his eye. Before he could react, a young woman stepped into the street, her nose buried in a book. Alex slammed on the brakes, the car's tires screeching in protest as it came to a halt mere inches from the pedestrian. Heart-pounding, Alex threw open the car door and stormed out. "What the hell were you thinking?" he shouted, adrenaline making his voice shake. "Do you have a death wish?" The woman, who had stumbled back in shock, quickly regained her composure. She glared at Alex, her green eyes flashing with a mix of fear and anger. "Maybe you should watch where you're going, Mr. Big Shot," she retorted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Or are you too important to follow traffic laws?" Alex was taken aback by her ferocity. He was used to people cowering in the face of his anger, not standing up to him. "I was following the law," he said, his voice lowering but still tense. "You're the one who walked out without looking." The woman laughed, but it was a harsh sound, devoid of humor. "Right. Because people like you always follow the rules, don't you? I'm sure if you had hit me, you'd have taken full responsibility and not tried to buy your way out of it." Her words stung more than Alex cared to admit. "Look, I'm sorry for yelling. Are you okay?" he asked, trying to defuse the situation. "I'm fine," she snapped, brushing off her faded jeans and adjusting the strap of her worn messenger bag. "Just watch where you're going next time. Not everyone in this town is expendable." With that, she turned on her heel and stalked away, leaving Alex staring after her, a strange mix of irritation and intrigue swirling in his chest. As he got back into his car, Alex couldn't shake the image of the woman's fierce green eyes from his mind. He had a feeling this wouldn't be the last he saw of her in this small town. After driving in circles for what felt like hours, Alex finally pulled up in front of a weathered Victorian building with a faded sign that read, "Millbrook Inn." He let out a sigh of relief, grateful to have found the only hotel in this god-forsaken town. As he entered the lobby, the musty smell of old wood and floral air freshener assaulted his senses. The place was a far cry from the five-star hotels he was accustomed to, but it had a certain charm, if you were into antiques and doilies, that is. Alex approached the reception desk, ready to charm his way into the best room they had to offer. But as he opened his mouth to speak, the words died in his throat. There, behind the desk, stood the same woman he'd nearly run over earlier. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered under his breath. The woman looked up, her eyes widening in recognition before narrowing in displeasure. "Well, well," she said, her voice cool. "If it isn't Millbrook's newest road hazard, what can I do for you, Mr. Thornton, Alex Thornton," he replied, trying to keep his voice neutral. "I'd like a room, please. Your best one, if possible." She raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "Our best room? Well, I'm afraid the presidential suite is all booked up, Mr. Thornton. Will our standard room suffice, or should I check if the broom closet is available?" Alex felt his jaw clench. This woman was really starting to get under his skin. "A standard room will be fine, thank you," he said through gritted teeth. As she tapped away at the ancient computer, Alex found his eyes drawn to her long, thick braid. It was an unusual hairstyle for someone so young, but it suited her somehow, adding to her unique allure. "Here's your key, Mr. Thornton," she said, sliding a real honest-to-God metal key across the desk. "Room 7, top of the stairs, end of the hall. Checkout is at 11 a.m., and please try not to run over any of our other guests during your stay." Alex took the key, his fingers brushing against hers for a brief moment. He felt a jolt of something Attraction? Annoyance? He couldn't quite tell. "Thank you, miss." He trailed off, realizing he didn't know her name. "Jessica," she replied, her tone making it clear that was all the information she was willing to share. "Enjoy your stay, Mr. Thornton." As Alex made his way up the creaky stairs, he couldn't help but feel that his stay in Millbrook was going to be far more interesting than he'd anticipated. Alex tossed and turned in the lumpy bed, his mind racing with thoughts he'd tried so hard to suppress. The real reason for his trip to this backwater town weighed heavily on his conscience, making sleep impossible. As he stared at the water-stained ceiling, memories flooded back. Memories of his older brother, Eric, and the fateful events that had led Alex to Millbrook. Eric had always been the black sheep of the Thornton family. While Alex followed their father's every command, Eric rebelled at every turn. Their father, Richard Thornton, ruled the family with an iron fist, expecting nothing less than perfection from his sons. The breaking point came when Eric, at 18, fell in love with Christine, a half-Roma woman from the wrong side of the tracks. Richard was furious, unable to accept what he saw as a stain on the family's reputation. Alex remembered the shouting matches, the threats, the ultimatums. He had stood by, silent and conflicted, as his father tore Eric's world apart. One particularly vivid memory surfaced. "You will not throw away your future for some gypsy whore?" Richard had roared, his face purple with rage. Eric, his eyes blazing with a mixture of defiance and pain, had shouted back, "You can't control me anymore, Dad. I love her and there's nothing you can do about it." The argument had ended with Eric storming out, slamming the door so hard that the family portrait crashed to the floor, the glass shattering, a fitting metaphor for their fractured family. Days later, Eric was gone, leaving nothing but a hastily scribbled note. "I can't live like this anymore. I'm sorry." For years, Alex had believed that Eric had simply run away to start a new life with Christine. It wasn't until their father's deathbed confession that he learned the horrifying truth. Richard, his once imposing figure now frail and withered, had grasped Alex's hand with surprising strength. "Son," he'd rasped, "I've done something terrible. Eric, he didn't run away. I had him brought back. I threatened Christine, told him I'd ruin her life if he didn't come home." Alex had felt the blood drain from his face as his father continued, each word seeming to cost him immense effort. "He came back, but he was broken. 2 days later he jumped from the 7th floor of the office building. I killed my own son, Alex. And Christine, she was pregnant. You have a niece or nephew out there." The confession had shaken Alex to his core. His father, the man he had idolized and emulated his entire life, had driven his own son to suicide and abandoned his grandchild. With his dying breath, Richard had made one final request. "Find them, Alex. Find Christine and the child. Make things right. Promise me." And Alex, tears streaming down his face, had promised. Now, lying in this unfamiliar bed in a town he'd never heard of until a week ago, Alex felt the weight of that promise pressing down on him. Somewhere in Millbrook, he had family who had suffered because of his father's actions, because of his own complacency. As the first light of dawn crept through the threadbare curtains, Alex made a silent vow. He would find Christine and her child, and he would do whatever it took to make amends for the sins of his father. Little did he know, the path to redemption would be far more complicated and rewarding than he could ever have imagined. The next morning, Alex found himself wandering the streets of Millbrook, the address his father had given him clutched tightly in his hand. The town looked different in the harsh light of day, smaller, more worn around the edges. As he made his way into the poorer part of town, Alex felt increasingly out of place in his designer clothes and expensive watch. The suspicious glances from locals made him acutely aware of how much he stood out. Finally, after what felt like hours of searching, he found himself standing in front of a dilapidated 2-story building. The peeling paint and boarded-up windows spoke of years of neglect. This was it, the last known address of Christine, the woman his brother had loved and lost. Alex's heart raced as he took in the scene. Children played in the dusty street, their laughter a stark contrast to the rundown surroundings. Older women sat on stoops, their weathered faces watching him with undisguised curiosity and suspicion. As he stood there, unsure of his next move, the front door of the building burst open. Alex's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the figure storming out. It was Jessica, the prickly hotel receptionist. "And don't you dare lay a hand on her again, you hear me?" Jessica shouted back into the house, her voice trembling with rage. "I swear to God I'll call the cops this time." She slammed the door and turned, freezing when she saw Alex. Her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice low and dangerous. Before Alex could respond, the door opened again. A man emerged, dragging a young girl by the arm. The girl couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, with long dark hair and a thin frame that spoke of missed meals. "Mind your own business, Jessica," the man spat. "You ain't got no right interfering in family matters." Jessica's fists clenched at her sides. "She is my family, you bastard. More than she'll ever be yours." The man sneered, then turned to the girl. "Go on, make yourself useful. And don't come back without at least $50, you hear?" He shoved the girl towards the street and stomped back inside. Jessica made a move towards the child, but the girl shook her head frantically and darted away. Alex stood rooted to the spot, his mind reeling. Could this be the child he was looking for? His niece? Without thinking, he began to follow the girl, leaving a bewildered and angry Jessica behind. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but Alex had a sinking feeling that finding his brother's child was going to be the easiest part of keeping his promise. Alex followed the young girl at a discreet distance, his heart heavy as he watched her approach strangers with an outstretched hand. She was clearly used to this routine, her small voice pleading for spare change or offering to tell fortunes. After a while, the girl positioned herself outside a small pharmacy. Alex saw his chance and approached, adopting a casual demeanor. "Hey there," he said, crouching down to her level. "Tough day, huh?" The girl eyed him warily. "Who are you?" "Just a local guy," Alex lied smoothly. "Thought you might want some company. What's your name?" "Sophia," she replied, still suspicious but seemingly grateful for the attention. "Are you really local? You don't look like you're from around here." Alex chuckled, impressed by her perceptiveness. "You got me. I'm new in town. Say, how about I buy you a snack instead of giving you money? You look like you could use a good meal." Sophia's eyes lit up at the mention of food, but she hesitated. "I'm not supposed to go anywhere with strangers." "Smart girl," Alex nodded approvingly. "How about we stay right here, and I'll go grab us some sandwiches from that deli across the street?" Sophia considered for a moment, then nodded. As Alex stood to leave, the girl reached out to stop him, her small hand grasping his. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. Alex stared at Sophia's hand, his breath catching in his throat. There, plain as day, was a 6th finger, a tiny, perfectly formed digit next to her pinky. Alex's mind raced back to a conversation with his father years ago. "Your brother was born different," Richard had said, his voice tinged with shame. 6 fingers on his right hand. "We had it. Corrected, of course. Couldn't have a Thornton with a deformity." There was no doubt in Alex's mind now. This girl, this child forced to beg on the streets, was his niece, Eric's daughter. Before Alex could process this revelation, a familiar voice cut through his thoughts. "Get away from her!" Alex turned to see Jessica storming towards them, her eyes blazing with protective fury. "Jessica, wait!" Alex started, but she was already pulling Sophia behind her. "I don't know what you're playing at, coming to this neighborhood, talking to little girls, but it ends now," Jessica hissed. Alex held up his hands in surrender. "Jessica, please. I can explain everything. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because Sophia is my niece." Jessica's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" Alex took a deep breath. "My name is Alex Thornton. I'm Eric's brother, Sophia's uncle, and I think it's time we all had a long talk." The tension in the air was palpable as Jessica processed this information. Sophia looked between the adults, confusion evident on her young face. Finally, Jessica spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Eric? You're Eric's brother?" Alex nodded solemnly. Jessica's next words hit him like a physical blow. "Eric is dead. He has been for years. And Christine, she's gone too. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Alex absorbed this information. He had come to Millbrook hoping to reunite with his brother's family to make amends. Instead, he found himself facing an orphaned niece and a town full of secrets. As he stood there, reeling from these revelations, Alex knew that his journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The small cafe buzzed with the low murmur of conversation and the clink of coffee cups. But at a corner table, the atmosphere was tense and heavy with unspoken emotions. Alex sat across from Jessica, with Sophia nestled between them, picking at a grilled cheese sandwich, her first proper meal in what seemed like days. "Start talking," Jessica said, her voice low and controlled. "Why are you really here, Alex Thornton?" Alex took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "It's a long story, but I'll try to keep it brief. My father, he wasn't a good man. He drove Eric away, threatened Christine. It wasn't until he was on his deathbed that he told me the truth about Eric's suicide, about Christine's pregnancy." Jessica's sharp intake of breath was audible. Sophia looked up, her young face creased with confusion. "Who's Eric?" the girl asked innocently. Jessica smoothed Sophia's hair, her eyes never leaving Alex's face. "Eric was your father, sweetie. This man, he says he's your uncle." Sophia's eyes widened. "I have an uncle?" Alex nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "I do, Sophia, and I'm so sorry I didn't know about you sooner. I came here to find you and your mom, to try and make things right." Jessica's laugh was bitter. "Make things right? Do you have any idea what Christine went through after Eric left? What Sophia's been through?" Alex shook his head, shame washing over him. "No, I don't. But I want to know. Please, Jessica, tell me everything." And so, as Sophia finished her sandwich and started on a chocolate milkshake, Jessica began to unravel the painful history Alex had come seeking. "After Eric left, Christine was devastated," Jessica said, her voice low and filled with old pain. "She was already pregnant, but she didn't know it yet. When she found out, she tried to contact Eric, but all her letters came back unopened." Alex winced, remembering how his father had intercepted all communication from Christine. Jessica continued. "Christine was disowned by our parents for getting pregnant out of wedlock. I was just a teenager then, but I stood by her. We moved here to Millbrook, where our grandmother lived. Christine worked odd jobs, trying to make ends meet. When Sophia was born," she paused, smiling softly at the little girl. "It was the happiest I'd ever seen my sister." Sophia looked up at the mention of her name, her eyes wide and curious. "But life was hard," Jessica went on. "Christine met a man, a local Roma. He seemed kind at first, promised to take care of them. They got married when Sophia was 3. Alex noticed Jessica's hands clenching into fists. "I'm guessing it didn't end well," he said quietly. Jessica's eyes flashed with anger. "That's an understatement. He was abusive, controlling. He forced Christine to beg on the streets, said it was their way. When she refused, he'd—" Jessica trailed off, glancing at Sophia. Alex understood the unspoken words. His stomach churned with a mixture of guilt and rage. 2 years ago it went too far," Jessica's voice cracked. "He beat her so badly, she didn't make it to the hospital. Sophia's been with him ever since. The police here are in his pocket. I've been trying to get custody, but without money for lawyers." Alex felt a surge of determination. "That ends now," he said firmly. "I have resources, connections. We'll get Sophia away from that monster." Jessica looked at him skeptically. "Just like that? You waltz in here after all these years and think you can fix everything?" "No," Alex admitted. "I know I can't undo the past, but I can try to make the future better. For Sophia, for all of us." Sophia, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. "Does this mean I don't have to live with stepdad anymore?" The hope in her voice broke Alex's heart. He reached out, gently taking her 6-fingered hand in his. "If that's what you want, Sophia, I promise I'll do everything in my power to make it happen." Jessica watched this interaction, her expression softening slightly. "It won't be easy," she warned. "He won't let her go without a fight." Alex's jaw set with determination. "Then it's a good thing I'm prepared for a battle." As they left the cafe, Alex felt a mix of emotions he'd never experienced before: a fierce protectiveness for this niece he'd just met, a deep respect for Jessica's unwavering loyalty, and a burning desire to right the wrongs of the past. Little did he know, the fight for Sophia's future was about to test him in ways he never imagined. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Alex threw himself into the fight for Sophia's custody with a fervor that surprised even him. He hired the best lawyers money could buy, called in favors from old college friends now in positions of power, and began to unravel the web of corruption that had kept Sophia's stepfather out of jail. Jessica watched Alex's efforts with a mixture of hope and skepticism. One evening, as they pored over legal documents in Alex's hotel room, she finally voiced her doubts. "Why are you really doing this, Alex?" she asked, her green eyes searching his face. "Is it guilt? Some misplaced sense of obligation to your brother?" Alex put down the papers he was reading, considering her question. "At first, maybe," he admitted. "But now, I look at Sophia, and I see a bright, beautiful child who deserves so much more than the hand she's been dealt. I see you, fighting against impossible odds to protect her. And I know that this is where I'm meant to be, doing what I'm meant to do." Jessica's expression softened. "You're nothing like I expected, Alex Thornton." "Is that a good thing?" he asked, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "I'm still deciding," she replied, but the warmth in her eyes belied her words. Their moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Alex opened it to find Sophia, her small frame dwarfed by an oversized backpack. "Sophia!" Jessica exclaimed, rushing to the girl's side. "What are you doing here? How did you get away?" Sophia's lower lip trembled. "He was yelling again, throwing things. I got scared and ran. Can I stay with you?" Alex and Jessica exchanged a look. They both knew this complicated things, but there was no question of sending Sophia back. "Of course you can, sweetheart," Alex said, ushering her inside. "You're safe now." As Jessica helped Sophia get settled, Alex stepped out to make a call. He knew that Sophia's stepfather wouldn't let this go without a fight, and they needed to be prepared. The next morning, as Alex expected, brought chaos. Sophia's stepfather, a burly man named Frank, showed up at the hotel, bellowing threats and demanding Sophia's return. The commotion drew a crowd, including several police officers who seemed more interested in appeasing Frank than protecting Sophia. Alex stood his ground, positioning himself between Frank and the hotel entrance, where Jessica held a trembling Sophia. "The girl is staying with us," Alex said firmly. "We have reason to believe she's being abused, and we're in the process of filing for emergency custody." Frank's face contorted with rage. "You can't take my kid! You ain't got no right!" "She's not your kid," Alex retorted, his voice steel. "She's my brother's daughter, and I'm not letting you hurt her anymore." Frank lunged at Alex, but years of expensive martial arts training paid off. Alex sidestepped the attack, using Frank's momentum to send him sprawling. The crowd gasped. The police officers, realizing this wasn't going to be as simple as they thought, finally intervened. As Frank was led away, still shouting threats, Alex turned to find Jessica staring at him with a new respect in her eyes. "That was impressive," she said. Alex shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "I just did what needed to be done." Sophia peeked out from behind Jessica. "Does this mean I really don't have to go back?" she asked in a small voice. Alex knelt down to her level. "Not if I have anything to say about it, kiddo. You're stuck with us now." As Sophia threw her arms around him in a fierce hug, Alex felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just about fulfilling a promise anymore. This was about family, about love, about becoming the man he was always meant to be. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, Alex felt like they had a real chance at winning. As the custody battle intensified, Alex found himself becoming more integrated into the Millbrook community. The town that had initially viewed him with suspicion began to warm to him as word spread of his efforts to help Sophia. One sunny afternoon, as Alex was leaving the courthouse after another grueling day of legal proceedings, he was approached by an elderly woman he recognized as one of the Roma matriarchs. "You're the one fighting for little Sophia, aren't you?" she asked, her accent thick but her eyes sharp. Alex nodded, unsure of what to expect. The woman smiled, revealing a gold tooth. Good. That Frank, he brings shame to our people. We don't stand for hurting children. She pressed a small, worn envelope into his hand. This might help your case. Frank's not as clever as he thinks he is. Before Alex could thank her, she had melted back into the crowd. He opened the envelope to find photographs, damning evidence of Frank's illegal activities. That evening, as he shared his encounter with Jessica, he saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes for the first time since the battle began. This could be the break we need, she said, examining the photos. But Alex, be careful. Frank has friends in low places. If he finds out you have these… Alex reached out, squeezing her hand reassuringly. We'll be careful, but we're not backing down. Not now. As the days passed, more townspeople came forward with information, stories, and support. Alex realized that the town had been waiting for someone to stand up to Frank and his corrupt allies for a long time. Meanwhile, Sophia was blossoming under Alex and Jessica's care. Her nightmares became less frequent, and she started to smile more. One day, as Alex was helping her with her reading, making up for years of neglected education, she looked up at him with her big, trusting eyes. Uncle Alex, she said, the words still new and wonderful to his ears. Are you going to stay with us forever? Alex felt his heart swell. I'd like to, Sophia, if that's okay with you and Jessica. Sophia's face lit up. Yes, and maybe you and Aunt Jessica can get married and we can be a real family. Alex chuckled, even as he felt a blush creeping up his neck. He and Jessica had been growing closer, but neither had dared to put a name to the feelings developing between them. We'll see, kiddo, he said, ruffling her hair affectionately. For now, let's focus on winning this case, okay? As Sophia nodded and returned to her book, Alex found himself imagining a future he'd never dared to dream of before, one filled with love, family, and purpose. But first, they had a battle to win, and with the support of their newfound allies, Alex felt more confident than ever that they would emerge victorious. The day of the final custody hearing arrived, bringing with it a tension that hung over Millbrook like a thundercloud. The courthouse was packed, with what seemed like half the town turning out to witness the proceedings. Alex, impeccably dressed in a suit that cost more than most of the spectators' monthly salaries, sat at the plaintiff's table with Jessica and their lawyer. Across the aisle, Frank slouched in his chair, shooting venomous glares their way. As the judge entered and the hearing began, Alex felt a mix of nervousness and determination. Everything they'd worked for came down to this moment. The proceedings were grueling. Frank's lawyer, a slick city attorney, tried to paint Alex as an outsider interfering in family matters. He portrayed Frank as a misunderstood stepfather, doing his best in difficult circumstances. But then came the turning point. Alex's lawyer presented the evidence they'd gathered. The photographs from the Roma matriarch, testimonies from townspeople, and most damning of all, Sophia's own account of the abuse she'd suffered. The courtroom was silent as Sophia, small and vulnerable in her best dress, took the stand. Her voice shook as she recounted years of neglect and fear, but she stood firm, drawing strength from Alex and Jessica's encouraging nods. When Frank's lawyer tried to discredit her testimony, suggesting she'd been coached, Sophia's response left the courtroom in stunned silence. I know what it's like to be scared all the time, she said, her young voice filled with a wisdom beyond her years. But I'm not scared anymore, because now I know what it's like to feel safe and loved. Her eyes met Alex's, and he felt a lump form in his throat. As the hearing drew to a close, the judge's decision seemed almost a foregone conclusion. Custody was awarded to Alex, with Jessica named as co-guardian. Frank was led away in handcuffs, facing charges of child abuse and various other crimes unveiled during the investigation. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Alex found himself engulfed in a hug from Jessica, with Sophia squeezed between them. As he held his newfound family close, Alex realized that his life had irrevocably changed. The man who had arrived in Millbrook weeks ago, focused only on assuaging his guilt, was gone. In his place stood a man who had found his purpose, his heart, and his home. 1 year later, the old Victorian house that housed the Millbrook Inn had undergone a transformation. Fresh paint, repaired shutters, and blooming flower boxes gave it a cheerful, welcoming appearance. Inside, the changes were even more dramatic. Alex stood in what used to be the reception area, now converted into a cozy living room. Photographs lined the walls. Sophia's first day of school, Jessica laughing as she cut the ribbon on her new bookstore. Alex and Jessica's wedding day. Each image told a story of love, healing, and new beginnings. Alex's reminiscing was interrupted by the sound of running feet. Sophia, now a vibrant 9-year-old, burst into the room, her face alight with excitement. "Dad, Mom says it's time!" she exclaimed, tugging on Alex's hand. Alex felt his heart race. "Already? But it's not due for another week." Sophia rolled her eyes in a perfect imitation of Jessica. "Babies come when they want to, Dad. That's what Mom always says." As if on cue, Jessica's voice called out from upstairs, tinged with a mix of excitement and discomfort. "Alex, I think this is really it." Alex sprang into action, years of corporate efficiency kicking in. He grabbed the pre-packed hospital bag, helped Jessica down the stairs, and ushered his family into the car. As they drove to the hospital, Alex couldn't help but marvel at how much his life had changed in just over a year. He had come to Millbrook seeking redemption and found so much more: a family, a purpose, a home. The next few hours passed in a blur of nervous excitement. Sophia alternated between pacing the waiting room and peppering the nurses with questions about her soon-to-be sibling. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, a tired but radiant Jessica held their newborn son in her arms. Alex sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Jessica, the other gently cradling his son's tiny head. "He's perfect," Alex whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Jessica smiled up at him. "He is. What should we name him?" Alex didn't hesitate. "Eric," he said softly. "After my brother, if that's okay with you?" Jessica's eyes welled with tears as she nodded. "It's perfect. Eric Thornton." Just then, a gentle knock on the door preceded Sophia's entrance. She approached the bed cautiously, her eyes wide with wonder. "Is that my baby brother?" she asked in a hushed voice. Alex lifted her onto the bed so she could see better. "It sure is, sweetheart. Meet Eric." Sophia reached out, gently touching the baby's hand. To everyone's surprise, little Eric's fingers curled around Sophia's 6th finger, holding on tight. "Look!" Sophia exclaimed. "He likes my special hand!" Alex and Jessica exchanged a look of pure joy. In that moment, the past, with all its pain and regret, seemed to fade away. Here in this hospital room was everything that truly mattered: family, love, acceptance. As they sat there, marveling at their little miracle, Alex reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. He thought of his brother, of Christine, of all the twists of fate that had led him to Millbrook. He silently thanked them, vowing to honor their memory by being the best father, husband, and man he could be. "You okay?" Jessica asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. Alex smiled, leaning in to kiss her forehead. "Never better," he replied honestly. "I was just thinking about how lucky I am, how lucky we all are." Sophia, still fascinated by her baby brother, looked up. "Does this mean our family is complete now?" Alex chuckled, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Our family was complete the moment you came into our lives, kiddo. Eric here is just a wonderful bonus." As nurses came in to check on Jessica and the baby, Alex stepped out into the hallway for a moment. He needed to catch his breath, to process the overwhelming emotions of the day. Looking out the window at the small town that had become his home, Alex felt a sense of peace wash over him. The glittering skyscrapers and fast-paced life of his past seemed like a distant memory now. Here, in this close-knit community, amidst the rolling hills and friendly faces, he had found something he never knew he was missing: a place to belong. His phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from townspeople who had become dear friends. The mayor, his former adversaries in the custody battle who had since come around, even the Roma matriarch who had helped them, all sending their love and best wishes. Alex smiled, feeling a lump form in his throat. He thought of how far they'd all come, how Sophia had blossomed from a scared, neglected child into a confident, loving big sister, how Jessica had gone from a guarded, suspicious stranger to his soulmate and partner in all things. How he himself had transformed from a driven, emotionally distant businessman into a man who knew the true value of family and community. As he turned to go back into the room, back to his family, Alex caught sight of his reflection in the window. The man looking back at him was older, a few touches of gray at his temples, laugh lines crinkling around his eyes. But he was also happier, more at peace than he'd ever been. "Thank you," he whispered to whom he wasn't quite sure, his brother, the universe, or perhaps to Millbrook itself, for giving him this second chance, this unexpected inheritance of love and belonging. With a deep breath and a heart full of gratitude, Alex stepped back into the hospital room. Jessica looked up, her smile radiant despite her exhaustion. Sophia was curled up next to her, one hand still gently holding her baby brother's. "Welcome back, Dad," Jessica said softly. "Ready for the next adventure?" Alex grinned, taking his place beside them. "With you three by my side? Always." And as the sun set over Millbrook, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, the Thornton family began the next chapter of their extraordinary journey together.